I was reading an article that came out yesterday in the New York Times, and the headline was Democrats threat Stacey Abrams struggles in Georgia's governor race. It said that Democrats are alarmed because you're trailing Governor Ryan Kemp in the public and private polls. What do you say to that?
I would say that in the public polls, you always have to ask who are they talking to, and they're usually not talking to the electorate that I see and that I know we can build in Georgia. In 2018, I was told that I was spending too much time talking to people of color, talking to black people and brown people, talking to women, that I needed to focus on a very narrow segment of the population. I disagreed, and I have the single highest turnout of Democrats in the history of the state of Georgia. This time, we are facing a well-funded incumbent who is spending money that has been brought to the state by Raphael Warnock, by John Ossoff, by our congressional delegation. But we also are living through, we're still in a pandemic. We are still dealing with the crisis of healthcare and affordable housing. People are despondent and they're disappointed because it's hard. And so I don't expect to be where I was 4 years ago, but I expect to win this year because I'm going to work harder than I've ever worked before. And the people of Georgia, I know, want what I've got.
How do you dispel this notion that you have a lack of support for black men voters?
So I got asked the question, and those of you who know me, I can acknowledge my dad. Daddy, stand up. That's why I'm about great.
You did a great job, sir.
So my father, Reverend Robert Abrams, taught me that you answer questions head on. And the question that I got was a question about whether I needed black men's support. And my answer was, if black men turn out in their numbers and support me at the level they are capable of, I can win this election, because we know that black men sometimes punch below their weight class in elections. And they've got reasons to be distrustful. They've got reasons to be disconnected. And it is not only disingenuous, but it would be malpractice for me to not do the work necessary to show that I understand. I am not a black man, but I've been raised by one. I got two brothers-in-law, and somewhere out in the universe, a husband. And no matter who that black man is, I'm running for governor to serve the people of Georgia. If I can prove that the work that we can do together will change the future of the state, then I am always going to say that if black men stand with me and vote for me and run with me, we can change the future of Georgia.
I don't know what to that question. What's your specific plan to engage black voters in Georgia? You know, black men are monolithic.
And then the reality is, black voters are not monolithic. We are always going to look for a leader who is going to respond to our needs, and black men in particular. And so my job is not to say what I will do, but to point out what is happening. Under the current governor, black men are more incarcerated. He has eliminated access to many of the programs that we put in place for criminal justice reform. He's made it harder to re-enter society. If you are already doing okay, very few black men who own businesses got access to PPP. He did, but black businesses didn't. He has done very little to invest in our communities. When you see all of these job announcements, they're not coming to where we are. He has not addressed the housing crisis, the healthcare crisis, the education debt crisis, and he doesn't seem to care about the future of our people. And yet, if he is reelected, no matter who is elected, the next governor will be in charge when Georgia becomes a majority minority state, and black people, for the first time since Reconstruction, are the majority of the minority. And we can either have a governor who sees black men as an asset or someone who sees them as a threat. I see us as an asset. What I want to do is invest in education from cradle to career, make certain that we are always taking care of our children, not over disciplining them and putting them into the school to prison pipeline. I want to make technical college free. I want to make sure you get apprenticeships if you need them. I want to make sure you're paying for student loans and student debt so people generate 2.1% of the business revenue. And if we stay on the path that Brian Kemp has us on, it will be 100 years before there is economic parity. I can get it done in 15 years. That's why I'm doing this government today.
21, Francis, you want to ask a question?
What's your plan to make sure that more money is put into like underprivileged communities?
Before we get on to Brian Kemp, that's the word right there.
So first of all, we know. Brian Andrews, there we go. Okay. Number one, we know that Georgia has one of the highest poverty rates in the nation. We have the second highest rate of people without insurance. What that means is that more of our people go into debt because they get sick. Because illness doesn't ask whether you're a Democrat or Republican, whether you can afford it or not. Brian Kemp is refusing to expand Medicaid, which is denying health care to 1.4 million Georgians. And if we expanded, 500,000 Georgians would get health care. And here's what that means. If you're working full-time right now, making $9 an hour, in Brian Kemp's Georgia, you're too rich for health care, but you're too poor to pay for it. It's because of his refusal to expand Medicaid that we're going to lose the Atlanta Medical Center, the 6th hospital to shut down in 4 years under his leadership. That means that all of us are going to be in more danger because our taxes are going to go up, the quality of health care is going to go down, and we're going to lose $3.5 billion to other states. So number one, I'm going to expand Medicaid. Number two, the reason I want to invest in need-based aid for students is you shouldn't have to be rich to go to college, and you should be able to see your way to the future. I want to invest in our young people to make sure they can get the jobs of the future. Number three, I'm going to tackle the affordable housing crisis. You shouldn't be put out of your house because you point out that there's mold. And under Brian Kemp, it is illegal for the city to enforce housing laws. It's illegal for local governments to do their jobs. We need a government who believes that you have the right to live under a roof, not under a bridge. And he refused to spend $450 million he's got right now. He's going to lie to you and say, well, I gave some money, but he's got lots of money and he's had 4 years to figure it out. My plan is to make sure we have access to education, to housing, to health care, and that for those who want to start a business, especially those who are returning citizens, that they have the opportunity to start a business because they may not be able to get a job otherwise. If we have a governor who actually thinks about the least of these, then the rest of us rise because the rising tide lifts all boats, and in Georgia it will lift all boats.
So one of those systems that is very in my heart is the criminal injustice system. Because I work for the bank to make a fair system for all. But it seems like that black men can't get a fair shake. You can do anything that you want to do, first of all, because you're a black woman. But you decided to run for governor again. What is it about the governor's office in terms of being able to finally move the needle in front of you?
And this actually goes to 21's question and Charlamagne's question. We know about the presidency. They spend billions of dollars making sure we know about what the president can do. We learn about the mayor every 4 years. But the most power in most people's lives is controlled by the governor. The state decides how much money goes into our schools, how much money goes into our prisons, how much money goes into our health care, how much money goes into our housing. Mayors get to spend the money that gets to them, but they don't get to decide what they get to do until the state decides what they can do. The governor is the most powerful job nobody understands. And because we have never had a black governor in the South since Reconstruction, we don't understand just how much power we are ceding to people who do not see us as valuable part of society. And that is never more true than what we saw happen in the criminal justice reform. For 8 years, I worked with Nathan Deal. He and I disagreed about a lot of stuff, but we agreed that criminal justice reform USA's largest state, and we are still number one for probation or parole. And in Georgia, that means you can't get housing, you can't get financial aid, you can't get health care, you can't get a job. You cannot vote. All you can do is get ready to go back to jail. And so for me, this is driven by what I learned with my dad. So my father did prison ministry in Mississippi in the 70s and 80s. Before he moved here, just decided to come. He used to just be preaching, now he's actually a pastor. So when we moved here, I know that if we solve the challenges in criminal justice reform, we are addressing years and years of disproportionate effect on Black men. When I talk about those numbers, although we're only 33% of the population, we are the majority of the incarceration. We are the majority of the unserved mental health issues. We are the reason that, unfortunately, law enforcement is the number one provider of mental health care in the state of Georgia, not our doctors. Those are all solvable problems, but you've got to believe that people deserve redemption and not just recidivism. And Brian Kemp does not believe that. He believes that the way to solve the problems is to track, to target, and to incarcerate. That has never solved the problem. We have never punished our way to progress ever in America, and certainly not in Georgia. And so as governor, I can restore the criminal justice reform work that we were doing. I can pursue more expansion of opportunities, including expungement of records and banning the box, and making sure you get access to housing, having transitional locations, making sure we have real public defenders who are fully funded, so you're not encouraged to plead guilty when you know you're innocent. We can address the issue of cash bail, not because you're dangerous, but because you're poor. And we can do all of these things with a governor who actually believes that the people of the state deserve access and service and not incarceration and being ignored.
You know, I know everybody in this room wants to vote for Stacey Abrams, right? But we know because of voter suppression, it will make it very, very hard. So how are you going to reverse the damage done on voting rights by Brian Kemp?
Look, unlike what we saw in 2018, this time they wrote it down. You know, in 2018, we discovered all of the policies he had pushed through over 8 years as Secretary of State. And we found a lot of them out in the last 8 weeks of the election. Francis was there with us when we were discovering issue after issue, the number of polling places that shut down, the disinvestment in our communities. What we were able to do after that election, what I had focused on, I didn't win the election, but I refused to let the broken system continue. And we made fixes to that system, which made 2020 and 2021 possible. And their response, now Brian Kemp gets credit for not committing treason, but people don't pay enough attention to the fact that he extended voter suppression with surgical precision. In the state of Georgia right now, in Gwinnett County alone, 37,000 people are having their right to vote challenged. Brian Kemp and Brad Rassenberg just outsourced voter suppression. And we have to have a governor who will fight back. But before we get there, you will have a candidate who's actually followed the system, created a fair fight to fight the system, and will do everything in our power to allow people to overwhelm the system with our presence. If we vote, we win.
Check. What about, I've been seeing a lot of stuff about candidates trying to shut down studios. What are you going to do to protect, entertainers like me?
I fundamentally disagree with the broad swath of approach. The broad swath approach says that if it looks problematic, we're just going to stop it. I disagreed publicly with the district attorney about using lyrics as a predicate. I write for a living. People wonder where my money comes from. Finally, people started buying my books. I appreciate it. Thank you all. But the reality is that we cannot thwart the entertainment industry in pursuit of justice. Now, we need justice, and those who are bad actors should be held accountable. But anytime you treat everyone as suspect until proven innocent, you are creating a chilling effect on not only the economy, but on trust in the system. And so I don't believe in that kind of blanket approach to be willing to do the right thing by the people, and you cannot quash art because you don't understand it.
So that's a really good segment. I appreciate the courage for bringing it up. I was checking to see if the funding was somewhere in the building. You know, but beyond that, the investigation of lyrics, as opposed to what people actually said and did on January 6th. Can you talk to us about the real gut-check moment that we're in terms of our democracy and why Georgia is ground zero for that project?
I'm a lawyer by training, but I'm Southern by race. And I know that in our communities, the tendency is to overcorrect, over-incarcerate, over-investigate when you are black or brown. And the tendency is to give you every benefit of the doubt, even though the evidence of our eyes says you're wrong if you're for the majority community. And that is not to cast aspersions on anyone, but it is to say that we have disproportionate treatment in the United States, and there's nothing clearer to prove that than what happened on January 6th. Let's remember, January 5th, we elected the first black man and the first Jewish man from the state of Georgia to the U.S. Senate. And nobody is talking about it on January 6th because they were storming the Capitol, threatening to murder the vice president, killing law enforcement, and holding all of us hostage to their belief that they should get to decide the future of the country. My response is this: we need to have a system of justice that actually includes us in justice. But that means you have to have leaders who see us. And the extent to which we have governors who sign all of those laws, every time something goes from a misdemeanor to a felony, every time money comes out of the justice system and into the carceral system, that's a governor's decision. And so we need a governor who actually believes in justice, not simply in Washington, D.C., but right here in Georgia. And until we take seriously the power of the governor, then we will not have the protection of the governor when justice and injustice meet.
Speaking of protection, where do you stand on guns? I believe in my Second Amendment rights. In fact, I believe a black person owning a legal firearm in this country is a form of self-care. So where do you stand on that?
So, I grew up in Mississippi. My great-grandmother Lou taught me how to shoot. She taught me two things. Number one, don't aim it at anybody unless you plan to use it, even in a commercial. But the second thing she taught me was that the person who holds that weapon is the person responsible for what happens. And in Georgia, the current governor, in order to win a primary, weakened the laws in Georgia to make it easier for dangerous people to get those weapons. By removing the permit, he removed the background check. Not everyone who wants a weapon intends harm, but people who intend harm like to get weapons. And you don't have to get them illegally when the governor makes it legal for you to have them. More importantly, for black men, the removal of that concealed carry permit puts a target on every one of you. Because when you have that permit, if they see that gun, they have to ask you for the permit, and you can prove you have the right. When that permit is no longer valid, then they can presume that you are in the wrong. That is dangerous for black men, it's dangerous for black women. I believe in the Second Amendment. My dad and I have talked about his guns. I bought him a gun cabinet on Christmas. I know how to shoot. I don't do it as often because hunting doesn't make sense to me. I mainly eat chicken, and shooting chicken is just mean. But I know that in the United States, and certainly in the state of Georgia, you can protect the Second Amendment and protect second graders. We should have to choose. I would repeal the permitless carry, the criminal carry law. I would repeal the guns everywhere law, where right now we've got parents on Facebook talking about people walking past their schools, open carrying AR-15s, and you can't, law enforcement can't do a thing about it. They're walking past elementary schools carrying rifles. Those children are terrified that it is illegal in Georgia for a single law enforcement officer to have a conversation about it. We've got to protect our children. We've got to protect our churches. We've We've got to protect our grocery stores. We should be able to go to the movies without being afraid of dying. We can have the Second Amendment and protect it, but we have to protect the people too, and that should be the priority.
I just got out of a serious murder trial that dealt with standing ground issues. And this is the application of the Second Amendment when it comes to black men being able to defend themselves. And the misapplication of that when it comes to black folks who actually do it. And so when you talk about the set of laws that you intend on repealing, when you talk about those disparate impact on African American men particularly, we stand up for ourselves within the Second Amendment, and yet, depending on who sits on the bench in some parts of the state, you don't have to drive very far outside of 25 and get to some jurisdictions where there's no person of color with any judicial authority. What's the role of the governor in making sure we have a diverse judiciary for application of law?
The governor appoints the judges in the state of Georgia. And let's follow what he's done. In the past 4 years, this governor has had judges retire right before an election so he can still appoint them so the people of color don't get to vote on the next judge. He's done this in jurisdiction after jurisdiction, and he's done it at the Supreme Court of Georgia, where he has had people retire just in time to take their power. He's done the same thing with district attorneys. And if you are involved in our justice system, the two people you should have a voice in is who can charge you and who can sentence you. And the governor decides who those people are. And Brian Kemp has manipulated the system again and again with impunity. And we have seen disparate impact on communities of color. Let's think about Ahmaud Arbery. Ahmaud Arbery was dead for months before the governor of Georgia decided to pay attention to his murder. 72 days. We were doing work trying to get his attention. It wasn't until the New York Times, which sometimes gets it right, until the New York Times finally called attention to it, that suddenly the governor discovered that we had a rogue DA who was refusing to charge 2 men for committing bold-faced, broad daylight murder in the state of Georgia. He doesn't get credit for finally doing the right thing. This is a man who was posted on falling into doing the right thing. His intention is never questioned, but he did not intend for Donald Trump to not become president. He just didn't want to break the law once. He didn't intend for Ahmaud Arbery to get justice. It took 72 days and the crying hearts of the folks of Glenn County of Brunswick to get his attention. You don't have to work that hard to get my attention because I'm already showing up.
I wanted to say, with all the various voter suppression laws put in place here in Georgia, does being governor actually feel like an attainable dream?
Absolutely. I'm going to answer this sort of, I think you're asking me what I'm going to do about veterans. Okay. Oh, no. He was doing sign language, and I was trying to make sure I understood. But here's why. But these two things are connected. Georgia has 13 military installations. But we have one of the fastest growing rates of veteran homelessness in the nation. And because Georgia has so many people in the National Guard called up, you've got a lot of folks who do not qualify for benefits. If we don't expand Medicaid, they don't get health care. We've got a lot of veterans who are being denied health care in our state. Black men who served and protected but can't get a doctor's appointment. The reason being governor feels attainable is because I got really close last time. It was 54,723 votes. But since that time, 1.6 million Georgians have registered to vote. They are disproportionately young, people of color, and they are eager for change, but they don't know they can have it. This is an attainable goal because if 5% of that population votes for me this time, I'm the next governor of the state of Georgia. There's some people who are like, well, this isn't as exciting as it was in 2018. I can't be brand new every time. The first time was to get you to believe. The second life, your life depends on it, because it does. We deserve leadership that sees us, that serves us, and that believes in us. And the current governor has proven on every one of those metrics that he does not care. If he cared, we would still have a hospital in downtown Atlanta, and Union City wouldn't have lost their only ambulance and their only emergency room. If he cared, Plattsburgh, Georgia would have gotten the same treatment that he's about to give to Grady Hospital so he can throw a rock behind his hands. If he cared, we wouldn't be talking about the fact that he has taken away access to criminal justice reform because he doesn't believe that it's right. And he wouldn't be running commercials saying that it's a problem, and I think that maybe you shouldn't have to pay bail for being poor, you should pay bail for being dangerous in the state of Georgia. Those are conversations we can only have if we have a governor who believes we have the right to be heard, and this is the man who made voter suppression the hallmark of who he is, and we cannot forget it.
I do a lot of like financial literacy work where I'm from. Can you speak to that? Like what your plans are with financial literacy?
Absolutely. So I went to the County schools too. I graduated from Alabama long before we were phones. But I know that I was never taught financial literacy in school. And what tends to happen is that if you don't come from resources, people presume you'll never have the resources, so they do nothing to teach you how to deal with the resources. But I've also never seen anyone as economical and smarter with money than the brokers. And so I want to do three things. Number one, I want to make sure that we not only create financial literacy opportunities in our schools, we have to make sure we've got teachers in those schools that teach those classes. Georgia actually does have a law about financial literacy. The problem is we haven't fully funded our schools in almost 20 years. And we've got teachers who are being asked to teach 2 and 3 different things, and financial literacy is part of the model. So number one, we need to actually pay our teachers a living wage of $50,000 to start so that they can actually do their jobs. But at the same time, if you want financial literacy, you've got to pay people a living wage. That means paying our bus drivers, our cafeteria workers, and I may not class for this, but it also means paying our correctional officers and paying our community supervision officers. And making sure that everyone is responsible. When you lose your freedom, that does not mean you lose your humanity. And we need a government who actually believes that we deserve to pay everyone a living wage. That's number one. Number two, I want to create an entrepreneur's learner's permit. So that when you want to start a business, we're going to make it fast. The same way we roll out the red carpet for Hyundai and Rivian, I want to roll out the red carpet for our small business people, or those who need a little bit. Your dream. Number three, I want to create what I call small business capital investment fund. Put $10 million into it, because not everyone needs $500,000 or $100,000. Some need $5,000 or $15,000, and you can't get a bank to loan you that money in Georgia right now. But the state can underwrite that and make sure that money is available. If we do those things, we not only help people dream, we help them fund those dreams and grow those dreams. And that's my intention as the next governor.
Queen Abrams, I know that running for Georgia is stressful. And I know that you're the go-to person for a lot of people, but who do you go to?
I go to my parents. It's very easy because right now they live with me. So no, I'm the second of 6 children, and my brothers and sisters are my best friends. We're all very different. My brother Walter has been in and out of the carceral system. And when I got ready to run the first time, I called him and said, do you mind if I tell the story of how you dealt with a heroin addiction and bipolar disorder? Because it's going to be all over the newspaper. Do you mind if I tell your story? He had every right to tell me, keep your mouth shut, this is my business. And my brother said, please tell my story. If it'll help somebody else, you tell me what happened. I've got a father who has been dealing with cancer for 15 years. And when I got to, people decided to yell at me because I was broke last time I ran. Because I went into debt taking care of my parents. My mom and dad, they had every right to say, keep that to yourself. But my parents said, tell people what been doing so that they know that they're not by themselves. I have a sister who's a federal judge. We don't talk very much right now because I want her to get in trouble, I love her. I've got a brother who's a social worker and a sister who's an anthropologist and a sister who runs a nonprofit organization. And every one of my siblings informs how I think about the world because we all come from such different spaces. But the reason I'm here tonight is that I have two brothers. One who's been in and out of the carceral system and is finally on his way forward. And a brother who's done nothing but try to help people that has many stories to tell me about being pulled over for driving while black. And who has a 16-year-old son who's about to get the license and he's going to have to worry every day if he makes it home. I count on them because I need to remind myself every day that I've got to think about both of my brothers. I don't get to pick one or the other. Everything I think has to be about how Richard and Walter make their way in this world, how they prosper in this world, and how if they stumble in this world, we lift them up. We don't step on them or step over them. That's what we do.
I want to follow up on that. You spoke about speaking on your brother's story. How important is it to give black people access to mental health care? And what are the generational benefits we'll see from that?
I'm going to also acknowledge my brother-in-law, Jimmy Gardner. Baby, there you go. Okay, he's married to the judge. She's not allowed with things, and he gets to know. So, mental health care. How many of you know the story of Breanna Greer? Breanna Greer lived in Hancock County. She went to Fort Valley State University. And during her tenure at Fort Valley State, she presented with schizophrenia. By the time this story takes place, she had to drop out of school. She was with her parents. Her parents were raising her twin 3-year-olds, Mariah and Maria. Brianna had a psychotic episode a few weeks ago, probably 2 months ago. Her parents did what we're all taught to do when there's an emergency. What number do you dial when there's an emergency? 911. But in Hancock County, under Brian Kemp, when they dialed that number, no ambulance was sent because there were no doctors in Hancock County. Instead, they sent a police car. Now, I'm not commenting on the legal merits of the case. I'm talking about the reality of what happened. Instead of being taken to a hospital, she was arrested for having a psychotic break. She fell out of that vehicle, got a concussion, and died 6 days later. Her children had been raised by their grandparents. And her father, Marvin, said, if I had known they were going to arrest her, I never would have called 911. But in Georgia, the #1 provider of mental health care is not our hospitals, it's our jails. It is law enforcement. And you cannot solve that problem unless we expand Medicaid in the state of Georgia, because the people who need help can't pay for it if they don't have insurance. If we expand Medicaid, the insurance comes, and when there's insurance, when someone can buy your service, more people provide the service. We are number 48 in the provision of mental health care because we don't have enough people here because they can't make a living here. But if we expand Medicaid, they will be able to come here, they will be able to make a living here, and when you call 911, they can send a mental health responder, not a law enforcement officer, to save your life instead of taking you to your funeral. That's the kind of leadership we need on mental health care. But we also need it in our schools. Right now, our schools are supposed to have one counselor for every 250 people. It's one for every 432. And in some counties, there's one therapist who basically goes through multiple counties. If we expand Medicaid and we fully fund education, we can pay for counselors. But we also have to stop treating our children as little bad adults, and start treating them as troubled young people who've lived through more crises than any young person should ever have to experience. And the current government does not have a plan to make certain that our young people, especially our young black men, our young black boys, it's not me coming, our black boys, when you get upset, you should be expelled, you should be embraced, and we should be working with you. That's not the system that
Black men are listening. Black men have heard what you have to say. We are within 60 days of being able to change the history of not just the state, but this nation. So what's the game? What do you need black men to do right now?
So there's a narrative, and Charlamagne, you're probably familiar, there's a little Twitter universe that presumes that if you don't say exactly what they want to hear, you don't have an agenda for black men. I do. It just so happens that I know that if the agenda for black men works, it works for everyone. I want to invest in education from cradle to career. I want to make certain that if you are a small business owner, you bid on a contract in Georgia, you actually get the contract. Right now, state contracts, it's about 1% of state contracts go to black people. We're 33% of the population. Why are we at 1% of the contracts? We know that if we allow cluster contracts, basically is my idea, let smaller companies bid on these contracts, then more people can get access and more companies can grow. But we also need to make sure that the state is buying from black-owned businesses, especially black men-owned businesses. If you do that, you can close the economic gap. I want to make sure that we address affordable housing, but I need you all to tell folks that things can be different. We have been trained over the last 20 years in Georgia to believe we've got all we're going to get. And we've been trained as black people in America to feel bad about asking for more. I'm running for governor because I don't want to ask anymore, I want to do. And what black men can do, what black people can do, what black men in particular, is number one, if you are on social media, talk about what you've heard here today. Tell people what can be possible. You're in this space because someone, either you knew enough to be here or someone told you to be here. But we need you to share what you learned. We can share the latest TikTok in a nanosecond. I need us to share how we change the future in a nanosecond. Number two, I need you to volunteer. People are more likely to believe something if it comes from someone who has a shared experience. I need thousands of volunteers because this is a big state. 159 counties, 11 million people. You're going to see people with clipboards sign up to volunteer. And if you don't volunteer, don't tell me you told somebody else to do it. We need your voices. Number three, plan to vote early. Charlamagne asked about it. Voter suppression is real. We can't afford to wait till the last minute. Early voting starts on October 17th. I need everyone voting that first week. We need to bank our votes and show America that Georgia is ready to win. If we do those three things, we got it.
We have one last question. You were talking about social media, and you just recently went viral. The homie right there, he's the one who posted that on TikTok. Brian, yes. You got to look at that video from that debate in 2018 and say, I told Brian Kemp's ass.
I would point out that he refused to show up for the second debate.
Okay. All right. So we're going to open it up for Q&A right now.
I just wanted to ask, what would you do to help poor people that are being priced out of communities and black people who are having their heirs' property essentially stolen from them?
So if you didn't hear the question, basically how do we address two issues? One is affordable housing, the other is gentrification that's forcing people out of the communities they help build. The answer to the first is that we need a government who's actually willing to help create more affordable housing and require that affordable housing be livable housing. Right now, that's not the law in Georgia. Georgia does not require that your housing be habitable. I want you to hear this. It is not the law in Georgia that the housing you live in actually be able to sustain human life. every other state that's had to deal with this, one of the ways you deal with it is called a circuit breaker. I'm a tax attorney by training. A circuit breaker basically says we're going to disconnect the cost of the value of your property from your income. So until your income rises to meet the increase in your property values, you don't pay the difference. You still pay the price, you pay your taxes, but you don't pay the taxes for the job you wish you had. You pay the property taxes on the property that you can afford. Because you shouldn't have to leave the place that you helped build. And so that's my question. Before I turn over to the next question, I'm going to ask you a question. Tell me what's happening. Why did you decide to use that?
It's a lot of things. I just feel like the first thing is you make sense for everything you say, and you're a black woman, so it's like I don't think there's no better candidate than that. Secondly, I think like me being here, there's a lot of people in Georgia that's like me that like pay attention to a little more, you know. And I like you, so you know.
Where's our next question? Okay.
How you doing, Stacey Abrams? My name is Portia Miller. I'm with the Georgia NAACP State Conference, and I'm one of your leading community leaders here in the Atlanta greater metro area. So I want to talk about veterans. I'm a U.S. veteran, Army, and my husband is a U.S. Marine, and we both suffer from mental illness. I myself suffer from mental depression disorder and military sexual trauma, which causes a lot of depression. Thank you, Francis Johnson. And my husband, he suffers from PTSD. He's a non-combat veteran. The thing I want to know is, when it comes to the criminalization of marijuana, and I have it hard, but it's not enough for me to even apply for any flower here in Georgia. But as a black woman that knows how hard it is to deal with the society here in the Atlanta area, and to be a fighter and a former activist, what would you do to help us legalize the use of cannabis, not only to help the veterans, but to also help children like my grandson that suffers from autism?
So the question is about legalizing marijuana in Georgia. So let me tell you how I stand. I voted for legalizing medical marijuana in Georgia. I'm deeply concerned about the business process that was followed to let those contracts, and the fact that too many people of color were not allowed to fully participate in the process. And it is deeply problematic that given that we are a state that is 33% people of 33% black, 48% people of color, that those contracts did not have the same equity in their distribution. And so I would revisit those contracts and make certain that there's real access to medical marijuana. I believe in decriminalizing marijuana in the state of Georgia. Absolutely. But I'm going to be honest, I do not intend to legalize marijuana in Georgia, and here's why. As long as there is a federal law that says that marijuana possession is a federal crime, it's Schedule 1. They don't do probation, they don't do parole, you get federal time, you do those fine. In Colorado, where they legalized it, the black population is 4.6% of the population. In California, black people comprise 6.7% of the population. In Georgia, we're talking 33%. And the disparate impacts are real, but so is the disproportionate charging of black people for drug crimes. If we legalize marijuana in Georgia, but it is still a federal crime, there are going to be a lot of black people in federal prison in the state of Georgia. And it is disingenuous and dangerous to say that we will legalize here, because the young person who doesn't know the difference between state charges and federal charges will lose the right to go to college, lose the ability to get housing, and lose 5 to 10 years of his or her life because they thought they were in Colorado or California. Georgia is not those states. And we've got to treat Georgia where we are, but that means we've got to re-elect Raphael Warnock so
was in non-service at a local Popeyes not too far. I was purchasing a homeless man a meal, and they told me. Because I know it starts here. I know, and I had numerous people reaching out to me via Instagram and single moms with children, and they're telling me and informing me about corruption in these shelters here in Atlanta. So I want to see about what can we do for that homeless population.
Absolutely. So, I think, first of all, thank you for your kindness. Thank you for your charity spirit. Georgia has a significant homeless population, and it is comprised of homeless veterans. It is comprised of men and women who have dual diagnoses, who have mental illnesses. It's comprised of women and children, many of whom simply can't afford to live inside anymore. And we have extended stay hotels that are taking advantage of our people. We have discrimination in the provision of housing because they can discriminate about the source of your income. And so our homeless population is underreported because we've got people who are couch surfing, who are hotel surfing, who are car surfing, and don't get included. Brian Kemp's answer was a couple of weeks ago to let $62 million to a bunch of different organizations. But the Housing Trust Fund in Georgia has $3 million in it. You can't solve a multi-million-dollar problem with a one-time infusion of money you didn't want to have in the first place. I not only served on the boards of homeless shelters, the Gateway Center for the Homeless in particular. I know that we need more transitional housing, we need more emergency housing, we need more housing for women and children and for families. Because right now, if you are an intact family that's homeless, the women and children have to go one place and the husband has to go somewhere else. We have to have family housing, and we have to recognize that homelessness is not just in Atlanta, it is everywhere in this state. That if you're in Statesboro or Milledgeville or Albany or McIntyre, there is homelessness. And that no one, hear me clearly, no one deserves to be homeless in America. That is not right. Brian Kemp is currently sitting on $450 million that was designed to stop people from being evicted during COVID. He refuses to spend the money. I will invest that money in providing access to housing, in putting more money into the organization serving the homeless, and also providing the treatments, because you can't just put a roof over someone's head. If your challenge is PTSD, you need a counselor to make certain that you can stabilize. If your issue is that you can't get a job because you're formally incarcerated, we've got to make sure expungement and access to job opportunities is also part of your homelessness. We have a responsibility to serve the whole person. That's why we have government. And I'll close it this way. Government gets a bad rap. The underlying idea is that we are all willing to contribute something to help someone, even if we don't get something from it, because we know there, but for the grace of God, go we. It is the most amazing idea that we're willing to pour into a system to serve one another, to educate one another, to provide health care with one another, to get job opportunities for one another, to house one another. Our current governor does not believe that that's the job that he has. My point is, that's the job of every American. Our responsibility is to look after one another. And my mission, when it comes to the homeless, or to veterans, or to young people trying to find their way, is that if you are willing to work for it, I'm willing to work with you to get it. But we need a governor who believes you deserve to have it, and that's why I need to be the next governor. Well, first of all, I'm going to hire you as my new manager. You got it? So he wants to, I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay. So he wanted to know what I want to do for the education system. Number one, we have a funding system in Georgia that was designed in 1985, when Atari was the height of technology. We have not updated that formula in a serious fashion since 1985. Almost 40 years. But more importantly, over the last 20 years, the governors of Georgia, exclusively Republicans, have stripped money out of that system, including Brian Kemp, who slapped $1 billion from education in 2019. The money that went in this year, he had nothing to do with it. It was COVID money brought to Georgia by Democrats, and he opposed that money coming to the state. He opposes raising salaries. Right now, the starting salary for a teacher in Georgia is $39,092. We pay less than Mississippi. I want to increase the starting salary to $50,000. But we also know that it is more expensive to educate a child who is poor, who is rural, who has special needs, who speaks English as a second language. We don't need to do another commission to find out what we need to do. We need to follow the 5 commissions we've already had that told us what needed to be done. I've been there and I've read the reports. As governor, I intend to actually fully fund our formula, but also update the formula so that the money follows the needs of the child and that we educate the whole child with wraparound services. If you can't see the chalkboard because you haven't seen a doctor in 5 years, then that's the job of the school system to help you get that done. And so I intend to be the governor who fully funds education because I intend to be the public education governor of the state of Georgia.
Hey, Stacey. My name is Charlamagne Coleman. Unlike many of the black men who sit in this room, I know far too many who are veterans. We don't have access to a healthcare system and or insurance, or can access educational systems here in the state. I am completely convinced that you are more than qualified to be governor of the state of Georgia. But I know that you come from a black man who is a pastor. So I know that you can speak very aptly to the issues that surround us almost on a daily basis. But we turn on the TV as black folks and we see not so positive images of us on a daily basis. And the question that I have for you is the one whose quote I wear today: hold fast the dreams, for when dreams die, life is like a broken bird that cannot fly. Hold fast the dreams, for when dreams go, life is like a barren field frozen cold with snow. So I know you come from a preacher, so I'd like to ask you today, what's the one message? Particularly in black communities, we often draw our strength from black women. What's the one message of motivation that you could leave us with here today? If we don't recall or remember any of the issues that you shared with us, what's the one thing you want us to walk away with? What does Stacey Abrams, Georgia look like?
So my favorite scripture, the scripture that every day of my life is based on, is from the book of book of James. It's James 14. Faith without works is dead. We cannot have faith that things will change if we're not willing to work at it. When I lost the election 4 years ago and I didn't become governor, my heart said sit down. But my faith said do the work you said you were going to do if you got the job. And so I worked to expand access to voting and make certain that across 20 states we had fair elections. I wanted to make sure black and brown people got counted in the state actively for the first time in 30 years, so I created a fair count, and we did. I wanted to make certain that we had access to the vaccine when Brian Kemp said that people just weren't motivated to get the health care they needed because they didn't have the cars to drive 15 or 20 miles in rural Georgia. I sent vans down to give them access to the vaccines. That's what I did when I didn't have the job. My faith tells me if I get this job, you will never doubt my work.
Born and raised in Southwest Atlanta, and of course I'm here to talk about affordable housing. In a sense, is an advocate for my community, and I went to City Hall this upcoming week, and there are older women that go to City Hall every time to advocate about rent control, telling their stories about how they've been pushed out in so many communities throughout the city of Atlanta. And I was informed by one of our city officials that it's impossible to do rent control in the city due to the fact of the laws that were put in place in this state. I do hear you saying about changing it. It has to be gone because these women have seen how many project homes throughout the city have been closed and they keep getting pushed further and further away. The current Thomasville is being closed, the projects, the elementary closed this year, and the women in that community are still being pushed further and further out from the city when they were promised they're only going to be 5 miles away. I went to college 30 minutes outside of the city of Atlanta, and I saw my first Confederate flag at the age of 18. I grew up in the city. I didn't know racism still existed. We can't push the people that built the city of Atlanta to these outskirts where they're looked at by just going into the grocery stores. That racial tension still exists just outside of our parameters. What are we going to do for the people in the city? I hate to say this, we have to keep them here because they're not essentially welcome outside.
I would say this, I think we know that right now there are, some say there are 2 Georgias, some say there are 159 Georgias. But the issue is we have a leader who believes there should be 1 Georgia. That no matter where you live, you have the right to housing, to education, to healthcare. And I do. But the issue that you raised, the underlying issue, is they shouldn't be forced out of the city if they want to stay in the city. It's less about what makes them outside the perimeter. It's the fact that they should have the right to stay where they are. Because in the state of Georgia, the governor of years past said it is illegal for the city of Atlanta to respond to the economic needs of our people. I know this personally. As lawyer for the city of Atlanta in 2003, I wrote the first law on behalf of the city to create a living wage in Atlanta. Y'all know Georgia Atlanta had a living wage law? We had it for 5 minutes because we passed it in the city and the state, led by the governor, made it illegal the very next week. That is why you don't have living wage laws in Georgia. That's why we don't have rent control in Georgia. That's why we don't have habitability in Georgia. That's why we don't have Medicaid in Georgia. Because we don't have a governor in Georgia who believes we have the right to those things. As governor, I can tell you I would be able to push these things through legislation because the reality is what's happening in Thomasville is also happening in Thomas County. It's happening in Fannin County. It's happening in Baldwin County. It's happening in Coleman County. And the more it happens, the more we need a governor who actually believes in one Georgia. I saw my first Confederate flag, I think I may have been 1. I'm not surprised by those who do not believe that we deserve what we deserve. But I refuse to be cowed by those who think that we can't get what we're willing to work for. And that's what this election is about. We win this election if we believe we deserve more. If you believe those women deserve access to affordable housing, then we need a governor who will do the work to make affordable housing real no matter where you live in the state of Georgia, no matter who you are.
How you doing, Stacey? My name is Sohi. I like to just kind of get to the point. A lot of questions have been asked, but I noticed from my own personal observation, a lot of politicians speak about their plan and what they plan to do, but what I always notice is that I never hear a clear turnaround of when the plan will go into effect. And also, so it's kind of a 2-in-1 question. How soon of a turnaround should the plan go in effect if you're voted as the governor of Georgia? And if it doesn't happen within the time that it was promised, then how should we feel about our vote?
That's absolutely right. So the first question is, how quickly will the things I said are going to do happen? Medicaid expansion is my #1 priority because it affects the most people and has the broadest impact. I will not sign another bill in Georgia until we get Medicaid expansion in the state of Georgia. That is my promise. And as the governor in the state of Georgia, the budget is mandatory. I'm not signing a budget that is not based on Medicaid expansion being part of the situation. And we know we can do it because 38 other states have expanded Medicaid. We've already paid for it. Our taxes are about to go up again because we refuse. So #1, that's my first question. My was what Mayor Jackson did in the city of Atlanta in the 1970s. That doesn't require legislation, that just requires leadership. And I can do that without legislation. Number 3, we have a lottery fund that can be used right now. It's got $1 billion in it. That money can be used right now to fund need-based aid, free college, and pre-K that is truly universal. All you need is a governor who believes that we should be able to spend our own money on our own people. Black people are the most likely to use the lottery, and we're the least likely to get hooked or keep hooked in the state of Georgia. But we can help everyone. We can lift not only black students, we can lift everyone. And as governor, I will have the control to make that a priority. And let me tell you about every other bill that I talked about, every other issue I've raised. Georgia has a $5 billion surplus. After we have paid every bill, after we put 15% aside, and God only requires 10%, but we put away 15%. We have enough money to expand Medicaid, pay for affordable housing, pay for students, pay for what we need to do for education, especially raising teacher salaries. We can invest in everything I have talked about and have money left over. And you don't have to believe me. I have a spreadsheet on my website that shows that it's so, and I've got an economist who's looked at it and said it works. And we can do all of this without raising a dime in taxes. The budget that I will present to the legislature of Georgia will do exactly what I'm talking about, because I will not sign a budget that does not meet these priorities. That's how you know I'm going to do my job. Now, if I don't do it, then I need to hear from you guys not 4 years later, but give me a year. I'm going to look very different than anything they have ever seen. So give me at least a year. But in 2 years, the majority of the things I want to do for Georgia should be on the way. There are going to be issues I haven't thought about. There are going to be things none of us expected. There are going to be emergencies that interfere. And that's why I don't make promises I can't keep. I'm going to tell you what I want to do. I'll tell you what I can do. But I'll tell you what won't happen. If I'm not the governor, none of things changes. Nothing happens because the current governor does not want your success the way that I do. And so I can promise you that if you don't elect me as governor, nothing that I talk about will happen. Thank you all so much.
I want to thank Attorney Francis Johnson. I want to thank the good brother